Yo, welcome to the Cosmic Paradox channel. Like, subscribe, and share. What's going on out there, ladies and gentlemen? Peace to the gods and goddesses. How's everybody doing? It's been a little while since I brought y'all a presentation, but there's no better time than now to get back active and all into the things. And I wanted to go over this movie with you guys. It's a pretty old movie. I used to watch it growing up, but I wanted to specifically look at this movie because we have dived into the Hermetic principles or the Hermetic laws or the laws of Tahuti, which the very first law, the first principle is the principle of mentalism. Now this movie, the movie is called Sphere, right? This movie Sphere really emphasizes the power of the mind's eye. And we're going to talk about all that and, kind of see if we can get some spiritual understanding out of not only the movie, but just some topics and just some symbolism that's within the movie. All right. So the movie Sphere, right? So this is a sci-fi mystery film and it was released in 1998. All right. So the film was based on a book written by Michael Crichton, or Crichton, however you pronounce his name. But he's the same guy who also authored Jurassic Park. Now, as I said before, I watched this growing up. So for some backstory, I recall watching this film a lot growing up. It was one of those movies that my grandmother loved to watch. And my grandmother is very vital in my path, on my journey. She's more vital than she knows as far as my journey for this knowledge. Although it may not appear to be so, or people wouldn't think that would be the case, considering the fact that she's a minister, but I certainly see the similarities in our pursuits for the higher spiritual calling. The way she goes about it, I can just see the similarities. I can see where I get it from. Even though we're kind of dealing in different atmosphere, but no, not completely, not really. But the movie Sphere was released in 1998, and I don't think it did that well of a movie, and it's probably because I don't think they brought in as much, money as they wanted to, considering how much they spent on the film. You know how Hollywood goes, right? So, now the movie had heavy hitters in it. You had Dustin Hoffman, Sharon Stone, Samuel Jackson, Liv Schreiber. And you notice both. Have you ever noticed that the top black actors have L-E-L at the end of their name? Denzel, Samuel. It's kind of interesting, but that's another discussion for another time, considering L denotes God, but we'll leave that for another time. But anyway, so we do have Samuel L. Jackson in this movie. Now, before really diving into this, I really want y'all to check this movie out, right? Because although you will get the message and the understanding about it, if you watch the movie, you can understand the concept even better. And not only that, you may have more input, or there may be more things that you notice that can just drive more of the metaphysical or spiritual message of the movie home. So, it was it's a good movie. It could have ended a little better, but if you are a student of metaphysics, of spirituality, of the knowledge, then you'll appreciate the message in the movie, right? So the movie Sphere. First off, a sphere itself anyway. What does a sphere represent? Now, if you just Google it, it might tell you that The roundness symbolically represents a sense of wholeness or oneness or completion, karma, and is respect for cyclical energies, right? This is why you will see psychics using a crystal ball. Beyond it just being a crystal, it's also in the shape of a ball and a sphere, because it's a representation of spirit. It's also a representation of mind. So a sphere is a three-dimensional closed circuit on which all points are a given distance from the center. Energetically, it's considered in many cultures to represent the void, origin of life, or even also perfect balance. Now, the sphere is also connected to cycles, right? Knowing that things are cyclic in nature, including time. Now, although Western society likes to make time linear, hours, minutes, seconds, etc., but the distinction between past, present, and future is a construct of your mind. Therefore, time is an illusion, because it typically goes in a circle. And technically speaking, it's all happening simultaneously at the same time. But that's another conversation for another time, right? And it's kind of touched on a little bit in the movie too. But all things in life move in cycles, right? Or continuous spirals, right? When we get to talking about spirals, you see a spiral means if you look at spiral, you look at spiritual. Spiritual has spiral. Okay? So a spiral, when we're looking at a spiral, we're thinking about creation. Okay? We're talking about the ancient meaning behind these symbols. And that's what it has mean in terms of the ancient knowledge and the ancient science, right? So the principle or the law of mentalism, the all or God is mind, right? The all is mental, right? That means that the all is the substantial reality that is underlying all of the visible manifestations and appearances that we know as the material universe. You see, the manner of human creation that corresponds to that of the all is the human ability to create mentally, to imagine. As we create mentally, we use no outside materials. We're using our imagination. We're using our mind, the spirit of thought or living mind that pervades our mental creations. So the all creates mentally, as do we create mentally. Therefore, we are co-creators. That's why we are children of God or the Most High, because we have that creative ability with our mind, just like the Creator. For anything to be, a thought must precede it. So through this principle, right, it is believed that God is consciousness or thought, and the universe is a manifestation of the mind of God. So using this law, we can harness the power of our minds to create the life that we want. This is where this comes from when people are talking about the power of your mind, the power of your thoughts, right? And creating your own reality. And you are the source behind your reality that you are living. So if you don't like your reality, you have to change the way your mind is working. Because that's how. That's the very first. That's what the law of mentalism teaches you. So using this law, and you can feel free to visit the video that breaks down this principle extensively. It's available on the YouTube. It's also on the Patreon. But on the Patreon, it's just a free link. It's readily available for you to view it. At least part 1 is when we're talking about the principle of mentalism. But it's also available on the YouTube. So you want to make sure you're subscribed to the YouTube if you're not. Because that's where all of the, information will go to. That's just being provided out to everybody. Right? And there's also the complete full lecture of all 7 of the Hermetic principles available on the Patreon or you can just purchase it as a short mini course and just have access to that as well. So all that is available. The link in my bio is the Linktree /Cosmic Paradox. So feel free to check that out if you want to. Now, back to what we're discussing. So everything happens within a circle. The circle represents the all of consciousness. Okay, so everything is created in the mind first. So before it becomes real. So that is the circle, or what the circle represents, right? It represents what occurs within the mind. So the Masonic symbol, when you look at the Mason symbol, their symbols show the tools of the Mason as the ruler or the square edge and the compass. Now the compass makes circles, and the ruler, is to ensure that you create a perfect square. So the Masons understand Hermetic principle. At least all of their symbolism comes out of Hermeticism. So when you look at the Hermetic principles breakdown, we get into all of that as we discuss all of those 7 Hermetic principles. So looking at the Masons and understanding their symbolism of what they're using, the reason why there's emphasis on the circle and the square, or the sphere and the cube in 3D, is because the sphere represents spirit. It represents spirit. And the square or the cube represents matter. Think about the Allspark in Transformers. Think about the cube on what was it? The Justice League is going back to trying to create something in the physical world, right? So even when we're looking at the Vesica Pisces, the symbolism, the meaning behind the Vesica Pisces is 2 perfect circles that overlap each other, and it represents the great womb of creation. So the circle, or the sphere, in the sense of it making it 3D into the 3D physical or matter, takes it, just more emphasis in the symbolic meaning of what it is, of what we're talking about. So we just, laying the foundation, laying the groundwork on what this movie is actually trying to tell us and what it's trying to show us, because we know there's lots of truth in the movies. It's ironic how much truth is in the movies and how much falsehood is in the news. And most people go to the news for the facts and for the truth. But it's not that way by coincidence. It's that way on purpose. And we know that it is. All right, so let's move along. All right, now, in looking at this movie. Okay, so are we on the right? Okay. Now, looking at this movie. It takes place deep in the ocean. It's 1,000 feet below the ocean. The ocean is represents of the abyss, of course. You go deep into the ocean. It's called the abyss, right? So, in that sense, the abyss symbolically also represents the primal waters. It's the subconscious mind. We talked about this also when we talked about the Sandman series. A lot of symbolism about the subconscious mind, dreams, and myths, and all of that coming out of that series. So you want to check that out as well. That's also on the YouTube. But it's representing the subconscious mind. So it's like going deep within the mind and finding a sphere. This is what they did. They were deep in the ocean. They found a sphere that had been there for approximately 300 years, which is kind of impossible the way that they talk about it in the movie. So already we're dealing with the symbolism of going deep into the ocean. So the symbolism is we're going deep into the mind. Okay. Carl Jung, he says that the subconscious is the abode of the emotions, memories, habits, and instinct. It's also called the instinctive mind. It establishes the order and assures that the incredible complexity of bodily processes will continue without conscious effort. Now, in this movie, you get a group of scientists, all different. They're different. They have different specialists. They're different type of specialists as far as scientists, right? And they're going to this discovery to explore this ship that they found. And when they get down there, they discover that it's somewhat of an alien intelligence in the form of a sphere. All right, now you got Dr. Norman Goodman. Okay, now Norman Goodman is played by Dustin Hoffman. All right, so Dustin Hoffman, or Dr. Norman, he flies in and he thinks this is a plane crash because he's a psychiatrist. Okay, so he's thinking he has to talk to some survivors. Okay, now once he gets on board the naval ship where they bring him, he sees there's an astrophysicist there who he knows is Dr. Ted Fielding. That's played by Liv Schreiber. Liv Schreiber, that's what's the show that he played on? That was the big show. What was it called? It was called Ray Donovan. That's it. Yeah. So it's your band from Ray Donovan. And then you got the biochemist, Dr. Beth Halperin, which is played by Sharon Stone. All right. And the ship's captain his name is Harold Barnes. Okay. And he briefs them. And he's talking about there's a plane crash, but it's a spacecraft. It's not a regular plane. It's a spacecraft. And it's in pretty much just looking like the coral is saying it's been there 300 years. Because you calculate, according to the growth of coral, how long it's been there. And according to the calculations, roughly about 300 years. Now, in addition to Beth and Norman and Ted, there's a mathematician by the name of Dr. Harry Adams, played by Samuel L. Jackson, right? So he's also contracted to be on the team, or he's named, or he's chosen to be on the team. Now, the team, these three people, they were selected, well, these four individuals, it was recommended by Norman many years ago. So basically, the White House came to him about, hey, we want you to come up with a protocol on what to do if we were to meet alien life form. That's what he did. He did it, wrote out. This was years ago. Didn't think about it anymore. Didn't think he would have any reason, to even, be thinking about it. But this is where they're stemming from. Now that has happened, we get the team. They go through their medical exam and everything. They get briefed. And what they are told is that there's no quick return to the surface. Now, that's an indication of an inner journey when it's difficult for you to get back home. Anytime you're watching a movie, you're watching a film, there's an adventure, there's something that has to be done, and it's difficult to get back or to return, then it's representation of an inner journey. So I already told you, they're going deep into the ocean. Okay, and it's supposed to be a spaceship there. So they're going deep into the subconscious, into the mind. That's what it represents. Just like on Inception, right? It was, you couldn't die. Certain things would happen. You would get stuck in all this. Or even look at everything that Dorothy went through to get home when she went over the rainbow. You know what I mean? So this is representation of the inner journey. Now, it's important to understand that when you are analyzing the different aspects, the characters, and all of that of the story metaphysically, understand that the journey itself is also a part of you. That's also a part of what has to be understood within the journey itself. Okay? So they take a sub to this habitat that's 1,000 feet underground. And it's already being manned or being run by two individuals. There's two women. And it's a woman by the name of Edmonds and Alice Fletcher. Her name being, Alice. Think about Alice in Wonderland, right? But her name is Alice Fletcher. And it's the role played by Queen Latifah. So Queen Latifah is Fletcher. She's Alice Fletcher. Alright, now, in all these plays a part. It's a reason why I gotta tell y'all all these little details. But we gonna get into the gifs of what it's all saying. The basics. Let's look at the character names. Dr. Norman Goodman. Norman, like normal, good man. He's representation of a good man. So he's representing of a normal good man. questioning things of the world, of existence. He's a psychiatrist, so he's a mind doctor, okay? So this is a normal man who has a good moral compass or a naturally good righteous nature. Now, as him being a mind doctor and they're in the depths of the ocean exploring a space crash, okay? Now, Norman, as I said, he wrote up this report and all these other things, so he has a history with all of these people aside from Harry. He doesn't know Harry personally. He does know Ted. He does know Beth. Now, when we look at Beth, if we were to look at Hebrew, the study of Hebrew, the language, the letters, the symbology, the Kabbalah is very, very vital in understanding the makings and the workings of the universe and how reality itself works. So Beth is like Beth, like the second letter of the Hebrew alphabet. You know, it's kind of like, it's like Beth, but it's pronounced in a way it kind of sounds like Beth, okay? So you're looking at the name Beth, okay? It's also the first letter of the Torah, okay? That's the first letter of the Torah. It's also number 2 in Gematria. So it's kind of symbolizing heightening emphasis on her role, okay? It's like Bet is 2 in Gematria. It's also the beginning of the Torah. Now, it's said that the Torah is, it's said that it's symbolic that there's 2 parts of the Torah. You got the written Torah and you have the oral Torah. And then if you look at the fact that Beth, also, she's the only, well, she's the only woman that's a part of the team. She was the only woman that was chosen to be a part of the team. She's representing the woman, obviously number 2, you know, made after Adam. She's the support for the masculine. She's representing of the feminine. Now, mind you, that Beth is also the biochemist or the marine biologist. Either way, she deals with biology. I want to say she's a biochemist. So she's very, very well aware of and specializes in how the body works, how the body functions, the body itself being of earth. The vessel is made of earth, but you go back to the earth from whence it came, right? So we got the woman, earth, all these are kind of aligning. Now you got Ted. Ted is a Greek name. It just means God's gift. Now Ted was like, he was arrogant. He wouldn't hesitate to show how intelligent he was, you know. He always wanted to be the smartest one in the room, which brings us to Harry. Now, Harry being played by Samuel Jackson, right? Now, his name is Harry Adams. Now, he was dropping the whole movie. He's the genius on the ship, okay? He's the Wonder King, as they told him. You know, he got his, I want to say he got his doctorate, or maybe, yeah, I want to say they said he got his doctorate at 19. But he is like the Adam in a sense, because he's like the original man. He was the one with the higher elevated thoughts and ideas about what they were dealing with. You know, and Harry is a mathematician. Okay, that's important to note when you're talking about a mathematician, because a mathematician is an ancient science. This existed even in ancient civilization. So a mathematician, God itself, there's the math of God. There's the intricate numerological aspect of the construct of the universe. If you can understand patterns, which is math, you can predict the future. So a mathematician is very, very ancient and modern at the same time. Okay, so you got a mathematician and a biochemist, a biologist, and you have an astrophysicist and a psychiatrist. All right. Now, contrary to it, though, even though he has these great scientists that he selected, this report that he did was fallacy. He didn't really put a whole lot of thought into this. He was just told to do it. So not thinking anything would come of it, he just did it. And this is how you can tell that he's a good guy too, because he doesn't even, he has to let it be known that he didn't fully do it in an acceptable way, at least in his mind. Okay, so he had to tell Harry, he was like, hey, look, I know I don't know you, but I put your name down for this. I didn't really think this was a thing. But Harry's like, look, I forgive you, man. It don't matter. It's cool, whatever, because, hey, they about to discover something new. But I don't forgive you for Ted. He annoying. I don't like him. You know what I'm saying? And Ted is threatened by Harry. So it's like both, you got these two big brain, two big intelligent people. Of course, they're going to, be competitive in that nature. Now, this is also a hint as into how the dynamics of things that happened to them once they got deep within that ocean. And it's interesting when you're looking at this photo, at least when I initially looked at this photo, it was very interesting to me because it brings you to the realization, right, of the fact that it's such a similar depiction or such a similar look to right now they're in the ocean, but at the same time it could look like they're in space, right? And it just kind of shows the similarities between deep space and the deep ocean, because a lot of people would argue with you that there is no out there. It's a deep down in the ocean that you have to explore, which is the true space exploration, which is going into the ocean. And the primal waters is what creation initially occurred in. Okay, so every creation story begins with water. And if you look at it, 80% of the ocean is not explored. And if you've ever looked at those portal type movies that's showing you monsters coming out of portals, it's kind of funny how they always seem to look like sea creatures. Even when you watch the movie Pacific Rim, he said that the invasion didn't come from the skies. It came from out the water. It came from the seas. All right. So it's kind of, interesting because even if you go into space in a ship and you travel the ocean in a ship. It's literally all the same terminology, right? It's literally all the same terminology. So the habitat is manned by two naval personnel, two women, Edmonds and Fletcher, and it's a black and a brown woman, okay? Hispanic and a black woman. So you got a black and a brown woman manning the habitat, or taking care of it, right? No coincidence of that. So Harry, Ted, Norman, Beth, and Harold, the captain, they go on to the crashed spaceship to look around. So including the two that's manning the habitat or manning their ship, in addition to Harold and the team of 4, that's 7 individuals. So it's 7 people that descended down, just like there's 7 chakras that's within your body that as you're down in this physical. That number 7 representing that physical completion. Like I said, you have 7 chakras. It's 7 days in a week and so forth and so forth. The power of that number 7. So 5 of them go onto the ship. They're going to explore the sea craft, right? Or the spacecraft. Now 5 is the number of adventure. So it's the 5 of them that goes out to sea. Now my man Harry intuition is on 100. Because he always is very spot on with his observation. He's always asking questions or observing the things that most people miss. So, and even so, Norman goes on and he still tells them, he tells everybody outside of Harry, he tells everybody the truth about the report because he's a good guy. They have to emphasize how good he is. So when they're on the spacecraft, and they find everything looks like it's an American spacecraft. And it's showing data records, but there's an unknown entry showing for the year 43. Could be 1943, could be 2043. It's not concluded at this time, but it says 43. 4 plus 3 is 7. There's 7 again. Okay, so what they find is fear within there. That's all they find in there. They know that there's sound and there's heat coming from the ship, and the only thing that they can find on this ship is this sphere. So they found this sphere. That's perfect round looking sphere. It has no door, no hinges, so it's no visible way to get in. Now, everybody has their different takes on what it is and what it does, but everyone agrees that it's extremely weird or concerning, because I did this spaceship go out into exploration and bring this back? Is this something that is harmful? Because they found bodies on this spacecraft. Is what happened on the spacecraft. Okay? So Norman begins to ask Barnes, he says this was interesting. He says, and it's important. He asked Barnes, he says, "Can I ask you something about this reflective surface?" And Barnes says, "Yeah, it appears to be mercury, doesn't it? But mercury would be liquid at this temperature. So mercury, that's the first key." And he says, "Oh, no, that's not what I'm talking about." He said, "What worries me is that it's reflecting everything but us," which was a great observation by Norman. Because what is this sphere, and to appear like Mercury, and we're already talking about the mind. So we know Mercury rules over the mental. We know Mercury has to do with alchemy. Okay, Mercury is the component of alchemy. So that could be representing Mercurius. Mercurius being, and we're talking about alchemy. Basically, this could also be, it could be representation of Philosopher's Stone. So either way it goes, it's symbolic to the third eye. Now, Beth even said, "I know a Zen master who would say this ball wants to be caught." And Harold says, "I don't think somebody looked into their third eye and created this thing." So the dialogue always kind of plays it's always a factor, because it fills in what you don't see. It gives you hints into what the symbolic references that they're alluding to. And for that not to be reflecting them, it's reflecting everything else in the room but them. So is it because they are other living beings, or what? Or, is it when things start? This is when things start to get interesting. And so they seen this sphere, they discovered this sphere, and it's when they first descended down, they were exposed to a gas, and Harry said to follow the yellow brick road. And it was a joke because of their voices, and he sounded like, like the Oompa Loompa, but they were descending down into the abyss, the depths of the mind, the depths of the universe. So he was the one, Norman being the